Alright, so let's get started. This is my final analysis of The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I titled this analysis The Iron Shadow because the book is centered around a boy named Amir, and Amir's guilt follows him throughout his life, and it follows him as a shadow that weighs him down. So that's why I titled it The Iron Shadow. Summary of the story: Amir is a young boy, a young Pashtun boy, which means that he is a higher part of society. He lives his life in luxury, but the most worrisome part of his life and the most difficult thing in his life is the fact that his best friend is also his servant boy, who is named Hassan. And Hassan is a Hazara, which means that he is lower class in society. That means that he is different from everybody else. And the book carries out that despite Amir and Hassan being best friends, Amir abuses Hassan, and Amir goes through his life with the guilt of seeing Hassan raped by a young boy named Asef in a back alley in their community in Kabul, Afghanistan, which is where the book is set. So Amir's guilt follows him throughout his entire life on into America, where him and his father Baba move after the Taliban invades Afghanistan. Amir eventually gets married to a woman with a little bit of baggage, and that also impends on his guilt, which ends him back up in Afghanistan, saving Hassan's now orphaned son, Sorab, and they end their life together, and that's how the book ends. The first literary device that I have is from page 47, and it's irony, and the quote that I picked is, "Soon it was just a pink, jagged line running up from his lip. By the following winter it was only a faint scar," which is ironic because that was the winter that Hassan stopped smiling. And this quote is as well a foreshadowing as well as irony. So Hosseini uses this quote to show the irony and that Baba paid for Hassan to get plastic surgery to fix his hair lip, but after he paid for the surgery so that Hassan could smile more, Hassan stopped smiling. The next quote is from page 65, saying, "The tension in the air was as taut as the glass string I was tugging with my bloody hands." And so I used this literary device. It is a simile, and so it compares the last moments of Amir's kite fight with the string that his hands are holding onto. And because the air was so tight, because the tension was so strong, Amir compared the air and the fight, or the air to the fight, in that the tension was cutting into him and cutting into his heart the same way that the glass of the string was cutting into his hands. So page 145 continues with the next literary device, which says, "I walked toward the concession booth initially, then turned left at the t-shirt standing where, for $5 you could have the face of Jesus, Elvis, Jim Morrison, or all three pressed on a white nylon t-shirt. Mariachi music played overhead, and I smelled pickles and grilled meat." So this is imagery that Hosseini uses here to touch all five of the senses with the touch of the shirts, the sight of seeing Jesus, Elvis, Jim Morrison, and also the mariachi, which is also hearing, and the taste of smelled pickles and grilled meat. And so he touches on all five of the senses here with this quote, and this imagery is seen throughout the entire novel, which basically brings the novel to real life, where the reader can see and hear and taste and feel everything that's going on inside Hosseini's head. Next is, "Had I actually gone to sleep after I had given Sorab the news he feared most?" Page 351. This device is a rhetorical question. It does put into perspective the guilt, again, that Amir feels throughout his entire life. He always brings himself down. He's always dragging along the iron shadow that he is plagued with because of the guilt that he first felt when he saw Hassan be raped by Asef. So my text-to-text brings in "A Good Man is Hard to Find," which is a story that we did read earlier in the year. And so I was thinking to compare Amir to the misfit. Now the misfit was a criminal. He was in prison and he had escaped. And he was a killer. He was a murderer. He was a sociopath. He was everything that a bad man could be characterized to be. Amir was only a young child who lived with guilt because he saw his best friend get raped. But they both had things in common that make them the way they are, and that the misfit felt guilt for something that he didn't feel like he had done, but he knew he did, and Amir knew what he had done, so he felt that guilt. And they were both punished in either way. The misfit felt that he was not properly punished, or he was improperly punished for something that he didn't feel that he did, while Amir knew that he was not punished for something that he did do. So they both had impending feelings of punishment and an irrational sense of guilt on themselves. My text to self was actually quite personal for me. I really connected with Hassan in that all my life I have been told and I have been put into a false sense of hope that people cared about me and that the things I did for other people went noticed and that I was doing good for other people. But I soon realized that people don't care about the things you do to them. And so I connected with Hassan in that way because I saw that despite all the things that he did for Amir, Amir didn't care that he did those things for him. And so I connected with Hassan on that level in saying that the more I love and the more I give myself to others, the less I get back. And so that's something that really touched my heart. My text to World was from an article from the Washington Free Beacon, and it puts emphasis on the fear that Afghan people have just living in their own communities. They don't know what's going on, they don't know who's ruling the country, and this article puts into perspective exactly what Hosseini was able to use in his novel, and it put into perspective the way that life really is and the piles of rubbish that you see every day because of all the fighting and people pulling dead bodies from sides of the streets and people making new and crazy discoveries about what life is really like under the Taliban, and in this case with Hosseini in the novel under the Soviets, and living under that sort of pressure and living in that fear and uncertainty that you could die at any moment. And so this article made just a couple days ago again touches on the fear that people have living in Kabul and what it's like in Afghanistan as a place of war. The setting again is in Kabul, Afghanistan, in the first half of the novel. This is Amir's home. All his family and friends are there. Well, his friends being Hassan. But it's set in a place of uncertainty because Amir's whole life is basically uncertainty because he does not know what could happen next as living in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is really a place of hierarchy. There's a caste system there. And so their whole lives are arranged around Hazaras on one side, Pashtuns on the other, and so they completely separate themselves to where there is no middle ground, there's no middle class. So Pashtuns are on top, Hazaras are on the bottom, and there's no mistaking that. But Kabul is also home to some of the most influential people in the Afghan community. And the patriarchy there is very strong. Males are on top, females are basically property as well, and they focus on the Islamic religion as well. And the second half of the novel is set in Fremont, California, also called Little Kabul because of the high population of Afghan refugees there and also the cultural influence that the Afghan people have there. There are other refugees and immigrants that do move to Fremont at the same time as Amir and Baba, so they do live in a community of Afghan people, which can sort of put Baba and Amir at ease because there are other people around them that are like them. So it sort of made their living experience not complete torture, but also full of uncertainty as well. So some of my favorite quotes from this novel are from page 57 and page 99, page 115, and page 277. And the first one being, I had a mission now, and I wasn't going to fail Baba. Not this time. Amir is a broken child because he did not have an adequate relationship with his father. His mother died giving birth to him, so he felt guilt not only for what he saw with Hassan, but because he feels like he killed his mother. And so he does not understand why his father hates him, besides the fact that he considers himself as killing his mother. And that just plays a considerate part in the novel. Even when Baba and Amir get to America, their life together on their own, they must focus on them and themselves only because that's all they have. So that relationship grows once they get to America. But by that time, Amir has basically almost given up on his relationship with Baba, but things turn around. So that's why that's one of my favorite quotes, because it really does put into perspective their relationship. The next quote I have is, I'll tell you this, Amir John, in the end, the world always wins. That's just the way of things. This quote puts into perspective the novel and real life. It makes the whole novel seem completely real. And it almost is completely real. The way that the world works now with politics and the way it works now with cultural differences and immigration laws and everything like that, this quote really makes life make sense. Because there will always be someone on top of you that can change the way your life is forever. And so the world is always going to win. The world has so much influence because there are big people on these big pedestals in that they can change everything with a click of a button or with one sentence they can completely change your life. And so that quote was a powerful quote, not only for the book but also for real life. So one of the discoveries I actually did make was from a article by Syed Raza, which is from the Cambridge University Press. He did an article on how the Afghan people were really unhappy with Hosseini's book, and they felt that they were exploited by Hosseini, and they were almost outraged at the fact that he dehumanized their situation and he almost made fun of their situation, and they were very, very displeased. They were angry. They felt that they were just completely thrown under the bus with this book. But the fact that the article talked about the video or the movie screening with President George W. Bush goes into Hosseini's feelings and how there is some saying that he was centralized and some saying that he didn't care about the things that were happening to the people in Afghanistan. So that was like a really interesting article for me, just to see how much these people were actually unhappy with the fact that that attention was brought to them basically because of the book. So my final analysis of the book, I really enjoyed it. It was great. It was so interesting. There were times that I could not put it down. I just found that it was so eye-opening and so enlightening to the way that life really is in Afghanistan. And I feel that people do often have these real emotions that we forget about, and that we forget that fiction novels can be so real, despite the fact that they are fiction. And this book really sends light to that. I would recommend this book to anyone on the planet Earth, in school or not. And it was just a great book. So I thank you for your time. And goodbye.